I will follow NPCs for entire days in Crimson Desert, just to answer one question. How realistic are their lives actually? I thought it was simple at first, but as I dove deeper, I discovered strange things. Stuff like this guy who just stares at a cart, doing nothing. After a few minutes, he slowly started walking through the street and stopped to lean at a nearby wall. Then the whole thing repeated again. Stare at the cart, walk, lean against the wall, and so on. I decided to keep observing him for an entire hour, and nothing new happened. But would the routine change at night? Would he appear every single day? Does he sleep? I had so many questions. To have a better look, I climbed onto a rooftop and watched from above. I could even observe multiple NPC routines at the same time. I also spotted a cat sitting in one place without actually going anywhere. Then I left for a bathroom break, and when I came back, the NPCs were gone. I checked the footage to see what happened, and at exactly 8:52 p.m., the NPC walked off screen to the right, and he never came back. Two others left the area earlier and also walked off towards the right. So now I needed to figure out where they went. I headed to the tavern to see if the guy was there. I checked the ground floor, then went upstairs, even checked the gambling den and stared at everyone's faces trying to spot him. But he was nowhere. The next day, I returned to the exact same spot near the cart. He was there, but he looked different. I wasn't sure if this was the same person. He shared the same routine though. He walked away from the cart and leaned against the same wall. Then rain started pouring down, and suddenly his behavior changed. Instead of continuing his loop, he raised his hand to cover himself and walked under a small roof outside. A little kid nearby was doing the same thing, so weather actually affects the routines. Pretty cool. Maybe the NPCs are not persistent. Maybe only the routines are, because this guy was a different model. As the rain kept pouring, I noticed more NPCs reacting to it. Most citizens started moving faster or searching for shelter, while guards continued patrolling normally. While following a commoner with a basket on his back, I bumped into them and knocked his staff to the ground. The NPC actually bent down and picked the items one by one, which was amazing. Some other people hid under roofs, close to walls to stay dry. But not everyone reacted consistently. Some people still sat on the benches in the middle of the storm like nothing was happening. Eventually, I returned to the OG, and something new happened. At 7:36, he walked towards the cooking pot and actually started eating some food. That was the first new behavior I had seen from him. After that, he took a few steps, realized he was getting soaked from the rain, and returned back to his old routine. The rain finally stopped, so things were back to normal. I waited until after 9:30 in the morning, but this guy didn't do anything else. Well, today was Sunday, so I headed to the church. And as you can see, the people actually go there at this specific hour to pray. They sat down on the benches and performed praying animations. I stayed to watch the service. Honestly, not much actually happened. There was no speech, no ceremony. The priest existed, but he mostly stood at the side, mumbling with idle animations, while the altar remained empty. Little by little, people started leaving, and by 11, the church was almost empty. I went back to check on the original NPC, but this time he was gone. There was another character staring at the cart though, but not the guy I had been following. Maybe NPCs only maintain their appearance while you actively watch them. Leaving the area probably resets everything. Back on the rooftop, I noticed another interesting detail. Remember the cat from before? It was still sitting in the exact same spot, but now there was a child interacting with it. So it seems the world changes a bit, maybe depending on the day. To test things further, I rested a few hours at a bonfire. Then there was a different NPC leaning against the wall, who then walked to stare at the cart. So, it's true, the routine is persistent, but the NPC model changes. It doesn't seem like these are fully persistent characters with unique daily lives. Still, I wanted to be 100% sure. I rested for a few more hours at the bonfire, and now the NPC was gone. The following day was Monday, and our target returned once more, with a new appearance. After another quick rest, he changed models once again. I wonder how many different variations actually were possible. I still had to figure out where he goes at night, so I got onto the rooftop and waited. Remember the cat? Well, now it had a different model too, and the kid changed as well, but the positions and animations were the same. Finally, at 8:33 p.m., the NPC I was following changed his routine. He walked off to the right, so I started stalking him again. He actually entered a building. I waited for a few seconds before approaching. The game told me I needed a key. I rushed across town to the shady back alley vendor and bought 3 keys. With that done, I came back to unlock the door. He was gone, completely vanished. The weirdest part was that the building looked like a home. There was food, a table, chairs, but there were no beds or any other room. I wondered, do NPCs actually sleep at all? Or do they simply despawn once they enter buildings? At this point, I needed more evidence. The next day, around 7:14 p.m., I tried looking for the same NPC, but he wasn't there. So I followed another one. At first, I thought he was gonna enter the same building. But instead, he walked to a spot nearby and sat down on the ground. After a while, he stood up, looked around awkwardly for a second, and then returned to the original location and sat down again. So this NPC had a point A and point B behavior too. I hoped maybe he would also go to a home once nighttime arrived. But then, suddenly, he started walking in the opposite direction, leaving the town entirely. I was really curious to see where this was going. By 8:49 p.m., we somehow ended back inside Hernand, and then by 9:20 we were near the stables. The NPC still hadn't entered the house, spoken to anyone, eaten food, or interacted with anything at all. That's not all. At 9:42, he suddenly turned around and started going back his own steps, like he reached the edge of his zone or something. He kept walking. 11 p.m., then midnight, then 1 a.m., and he was still going. 2 a.m., 3, 4. Evidently, the game never expects you to stalk an NPC for this long. So, he was stuck in this behavior forever. But then, this happened.
Excuse me, have you got a moment?
The NPC was gone. Not walked away, not hidden, gone. It was just 1 second. Unbelievable. For my next target, I chose a worker, just a regular farmer in Hernand. He spent his time tending to some vegetables, constantly moving between 2 spots a few meters apart. That was his entire life. Point A to point B, over and over again. Nearby, there were other farmers standing around the broken cart, inspecting it like they were trying to fix it or something. But time passed and nothing changed. They never repaired it or reacted to anything. I wondered if these guys would be here every single day. As I walked through the farm, I also noticed travelers carrying wooden packs on their backs, peasants holding sacks over their shoulders. I wondered if they were actually transporting goods somewhere or not. We'll be checking that out soon. But for now, I focus on the cabbage farmer. He just kept repeating the same loop for hours on end. Then, finally, he stopped working and started leaving the farm. Most of the workers did the same, so I immediately started following him to see where he was heading. He slowly walked towards Hernand through the roads. The streets were surprisingly busy. There were moments where people carrying baskets literally bumped into each other and dropped items on the floor. After following this farmer for a while, he didn't seem to be going anywhere. He wasn't entering buildings or interacting with anyone. Still, I kept following him. At one point, a guard on horseback accidentally ran into the farmer, but the NPC barely reacted at all, just continued walking like nothing happened. After 9:30, I tried my old trick again. I looked away for a few seconds and then turned the camera back. He was still there, walking. He didn't vanish. Midnight arrived and the farmer was still going at it. Eventually, I climbed onto a cliff and watched him from above to see if distance would do anything. And then he disappeared right in front of my eyes. I immediately started gliding towards the spot, but he was completely gone. Seconds later, a group of guards randomly spawned nearby, running through the road. If we take another look at the footage, you can see the precise moment where the NPC vanishes. But you can also see a guard with a torch who doesn't despawn. So I'm not sure what's going on. By now, we've only looked at random people. What about the named NPCs in the world? Before moving on to the next category, I first wanted to take one last look at the workers, specifically the ones carrying fruit and sacks. My theory was that maybe they actually transported the goods somewhere meaningful, since it was their main activity. So I started following them. Unfortunately, they functioned almost the same as the last NPC. They didn't even enter the town. They just walked around the outer roads in giant loops over and over again. Then something happened. Bandits attacked me while I was following the civilians. The ones carrying the baskets immediately panicked, dropped everything and ran away in fear. But then, a free sword riding on horseback nearby actually joined the fight and helped me fend off the criminals. After the combat, I was able to pick up the apples from the ground, although this was a crime, so bear that in mind. To finish our test with the normal workers, I paid one last visit at the church to see if the priests maybe had a life. Turns out this was even worse. They didn't even move at all. I waited and waited, and they stood still in the same spots. I seriously questioned if anybody in the game actually sleeps. I entered the random homes throughout Hernand looking for beds. Every single one was empty. No one was actually sleeping. Maybe it's not even a thing. I wandered through houses after midnight, checking all the interiors. Another thing that was a bit disappointing was that most characters were still working inside. But then I stumbled across a woman who was falling asleep while leaning against the wall. So maybe this counts?
Nothing but fools and lunatics these days.
Before we check out our first named NPC, I wanted to investigate wagons to see if maybe the vehicles actually go from town to town, and immediately I noticed something. You can literally hang underneath the wagon, holding onto the bottom. I have no idea why this is in the game, but I absolutely love it. It's like something out of Metal Gear Solid. The prison wagon was escorted by 2 guards walking beside it, which was interesting because the actual cage was empty, so maybe they just left the prisoner, I don't know. One thing I noted was how slow the wagon moved. Still, I wanted to see where it would go, so this time I started placing markers on the map to track its route properly. At one point, some animals and NPCs were blocking the road and our wagon stopped for a bit. It was pretty cool seeing it interact like that with the world. Eventually, we crossed the Hernand Gate and entered the Demenes region. Maybe the destination would be the city itself, but then I realized something strange. The guards escorting the wagon had disappeared completely, so now I'm not even sure if they were actually escorting it or if they were just random NPCs walking alongside us. Still, this wagon seemed to behave differently from the civilians. It just kept going far away from where we started. After crossing a bridge, we encountered another wagon completely bugged out in the middle of the road. It was glitching, like it was completely broken. My driver even tried awkwardly maneuvering around, but the AI was doing some weird stuff. It took a while, but things went back to normal. Eventually, I could see the city of Demenes on the horizon. Finally, we were making progress. I was honestly nervous the entire time because in my previous video, this happened. Thankfully, things were good for the moment. Unfortunately, instead of entering the city, the wagon suddenly turned away from it, kept traveling down the road. I thought maybe it would use another gate, but no. It simply passed the city entirely. The wagon just kept going without stopping. I wish the driver took a rest, entered somewhere or something. Eventually, I started seeing water in the distance, and it looked like we were approaching the coast. This was the Demenes port. Maybe this was finally the wagon's actual destination. It stopped briefly for a moment, but then it continued moving again towards a closed gate. And this happened. I have no idea how I survived that. I thought the thing was going to... Somehow we were alright. Now we were crossing some sort of bridge over water. Right next to us there was a large ship docked. Then we passed through another gate with even more camera jank. But we were alright. I assumed the prison wagon would finally stop here, but no, it kept going. I honestly was surprised at the sheer strength of my character, holding on for dear life under the wagon. At one point, we left the trade house and returned to the main road. But when I checked the map, I realized we were now backtracking, literally turning back to where we came from. Wagons and generic citizens, they just loop endlessly. It was finally time to follow a named NPC, an actual permanent character. So I returned to Hernand to search for our next target, Bremer. He was the owner of a cattle ranch. The problem was actually finding him. It was much more difficult than I thought. I checked the ranch first, but he wasn't there. Then I searched the tavern, the town center, but nothing. I sat down hoping he would walk by. Then, when I stood up, the camera completely glitched out and stopped following my character. Actually, I just realized I was logged in with the random NPC on the lower right corner, so never mind. Finally, at around 11 p.m, I found Bremer sitting outside the tavern. He was at one of the tables alongside 2 other NPCs, talking and having some drinks. I quickly sat on a nearby bench. A few minutes later, all of them stood up and left. Bremer actually left the town and had a bit of a problem with the path finding. For the first time in this entire investigation, it genuinely looked like an NPC was actually going home. Well, if you don't count the first one. Bremer walked inside. I followed him right after, and you won't believe what I saw. He went to bed and started sleeping. This was real. I couldn't believe it. After all the empty beds and disappearing NPCs, there was finally a proper human that goes to sleep. What made the whole thing even funnier is that nobody reacted to me. Bremer wasn't alone, by the way. There was another man sitting right next to us. I have no idea who this guy is. Is he family? Friends? Nonetheless, I proceeded to sit next to him as I watched Bremer sleep through the night. Then, around 3 a.m, he actually woke up. Both him and the stranger stood up and left the house. Bremer headed towards the ranch to begin working. I was really surprised. It was super early. He walked over to an animal feeder and started performing actual work animations. There was even another worker nearby already active too. After a while, Bremer stopped and walked to another spot where he suddenly froze in place. I waited, and he was still there. Something felt off, so I tried picking up some of the clutter in front of him. This actually worked. The NPC was stuck, apparently. Around 5:30 a.m, he moved to a pile of hay. Fun fact, you can actually hide inside it. Just like in Assassin's Creed. After a few minutes, Bremer left and headed to the animal feeder once again. So, for a few hours, he literally just went from point A to point B, working from one area to the other. Finally, around 8 o'clock, he actually exited the ranch. The pathfinding was a little buggy again, but then he suddenly did something unexpected. He pulled out a huge pipe and started smoking. I had no idea this even existed in the game. He just stood there, casually smoking, like he was on a break after his shift. Bremer felt more alive than any other NPC I had followed before. Around 9 a.m, he walked away from the ranch and headed south. Then he reached a cooking station and actually started eating. He had an apple for breakfast and he seemed to be really into it.
Nice.
I was so happy to finally see an NPC with an actual routine. After finishing the apple, he actually started using the cooking pot itself, stirring it with some kind of spoon. Then he grabbed a second apple. The guy loved his fruit. Once he finally finished, he continued walking through the farm area. And at 10:42 a.m, he suddenly stopped and squatted on the ground, taking a break. I had the feeling that he knew I was following him. This whole hour seemed to be specifically for relaxing. He proceeded to climb some stairs and sat down again. As I was following him, I almost started a fire. Thankfully, Bremer didn't seem to care at all, so I just kept stalking him from behind some wooden planks. It was almost midday when he stood up again and moved to another post to lean against the fence. I was just happy to see he was not trapped in an infinite loop like the others. Even if he was still relaxing, he was doing so in multiple places. Around 12:30, he walked to yet another spot to sit down. Now I finally understood why he's so difficult to find during the daytime. He's constantly changing places. Then, finally, around 1:30 p.m, Bremer actually returned to work. He started tending to vegetables on the ground, moving between different farming spots. He actually spent quite a few hours there. I found the perfect spot at a rooftop to overlook the entire place. Here you can see his full routine. One weird thing was that between one point and the other, he walked towards a group of kids and then backed away. The pathfinding was a little strange. Around 5:15, Bremer suddenly stopped working and pulled out a bottle to start drinking. But that's not all. Another NPC walked over and pulled out the huge pipe and started going at it. Around 6 o'clock, they both got up alongside several other NPCs. It was like everyone stopped doing their daytime activities at once. Bremer headed towards a bonfire again and had some dinner, which of course was an apple. Around 7, he left and headed to the same drinking spot from before. The smoking NPC joined him again, of course. It's like they were regular drinking buddies. An hour later, Bremer finally left the farm entirely. This time, he crossed the wooden bridge and actually went into town, specifically the tavern. But this time, there was something going on there. A group of NPCs were gathered, arguing, emoting, and acting like they were discussing about something. Bremer was awkwardly waiting, as if they were blocking his path. After a while, everything went back to normal, and he sat down at the table with the rest, exactly as we found him the night before. Just like that, we had completed a full 24-hour of Bremer's life. This is how an NPC should actually be, unlike the other generic ones. He actually slept, woke up to work, took breaks, smoked, ate meals, drank with his friends, and ended his day at the tavern. It felt like a proper person. I wished every other NPC behaved like this. But I understand it would be really taxing to optimize the game around so many different people. I get it. Just imagine if someday they could pull it off. Maybe in an update or a new game. There you have it. NPC routines do exist in Crimson Desert. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.